Good morning to you, Matty Johns.
Good morning, Matty White. How are you?
I'm good, thanks, mate. Good, nice, solid weekend. A lot to pick apart. How was your weekend?
Yeah, it was good. It was good. I got the wife over in Queenstown, so I dropped her at the airport on Saturday morning, and it's just been all on since then. You know, while the cat's away, the mice will dance.
Yeah, and dance you do. And not only that, get it captured on video as well, and then played on your own show. Talk about stitch-ups. I mean, when you can't even trust your own producer, Matty, what hope have you got?
Honestly, it was like, to give people a bit of background. Jake Duke had his birthday, and I was in earshot of Jake the other day, and he said, he just said, Matty, a passing comment, look, I got my birthday upstairs at the Stain. He said, if you'd like to call in for one, feel free. Yeah. Well, I did call in for one. I left at 1. It was, and of course, up doing a bit of singing. Yeah. And you're up there doing it, I'm thinking to myself, oh no, I know this is what's going to happen. He's going to appear on the show. So I rang Cleggy, our producer, yesterday morning, and said, listen, mate, this is what's going down. I'd really appreciate it if, you don't. He goes, Matty, I wouldn't do that. No. Sure enough. Yeah. It's time for a new producer, Matty.
Well, the amount of phones that were in the room, you were never, ever going to escape that one. So, nice job. If you missed it, you can find... Well, it'll be replayed today on Fox.
On Rage.
On Rage, and you can catch up as well. Who's hot and who's not after round 25? So, 2 weeks to go. There are some clear premiership contenders who are throwing up their hands and almost hitting top gear. And there are those who are dead set on the slide and can't seem to control it. Who do you reckon's hot and not?
Well, the two standouts, Matty, were the two sides that played yesterday. Newcastle Knights, 7 in a row. This is the first time since 2001. And, Matty, I don't know if it's just me, but it seemingly came out of nowhere.
Yeah.
Like they were struggling. And, look, I mean, let's face it, it's coincided with Kalen Ponga suddenly play, in my opinion, the best football of his career. I've admired the way Kalen's played ever since he made his first grade debut, but I've never seen him playing better than he is right at the moment. In the first half yesterday, he was untouchable. He just, and the two guys that deserve a lot of credit for that are the halves. Hastings didn't play yesterday, but Clune did the job, and yet they get him the ball in the sweet spot. So the Knights... obviously, they're the team that's hot, and Souths, Matty, the way they started yesterday, they started really intense. Their first defensive set was the best I've seen from them in the back half of the year. Their first yardage set was a cracker, and I'm going, whoa, okay, here we go. The real South Sydney have arrived. But then they just fell back into old ways. It started the early turning point. Like, little things make a really big difference. And, I mean, this is not... You can question whether this is a little thing, but Lockie Ilias, early in the contest, they got all the ascendancy South, and he just miscues a kick a little bit. Newcastle got a 7-tackle set. And, honestly, Newcastle took control from there and never relinquished it in the first 40 minutes. And the only thing I can say, Matty, some of the frivolous errors from South Sydney... All I can say is this, is that they've allowed this stuff to creep into their game. This, lack of intensity, and she'll be right, we'll get them at the end, we'll score enough points. And what that's done, Matty, it's become, it's become themselves. It's bled so much into the team that it's become South Sydney.
It's interesting that those two played yesterday when we posed that hot and not question, because you're right, it's kind of right in front of us in that match. So the Knights, the come out of nowhere question, it's almost as though everybody was saying, it's obvious what the Knights need to do. Get Kalen Ponga back to where he needs to go to and let him fire. The South Sydney question seems to be a little bit more complex, because a lot of people are saying, well, it's not obvious, so something must be going on. And you've heard that a million times, Matty. What's going on at the Rabbitohs? Is there anything you reckon bubbling under, or is it just a processional, almost tactical, systematic problem that they've got at the moment?
Matty, I honestly believe it is just something that they've allowed to creep into their game. This is complacency the right word? Yeah, I suppose it is. Like I've always said, there's two South Sydneys. There's the South Sydney side that has their attitude that, look, we'll let you score 28 points, we'll score 30. And Yeah, that's South Sydney are frivolous with the football. They blow chances. They put a lot more energy in their attack than they do to their defence, and that was the South Sydney we saw yesterday. In the first half of the season was the good Souths, where they put all their focus on grinding and just pouring energy into their defence, and everything looks after itself from there. Interesting, Matty, on the Knights. What happens, Matty, sometimes is you've only got a finite amount of not just physical energy, but mental energy in a game. And if a side does, if your attack is too complex and you don't really understand your own attacking game plan, then everyone pours so much mental energy into trying to get the attack right. And the first thing that suffers are the things that really matter. Defence, kick chase. So what you're seeing now with the Newcastle Knights, they've either simplified their attack or they're finally understanding it. And as a consequence, they're not having to think too much. Right? And you're seeing the difference, how that spills over in defence. Like Bradman Best yesterday, I reckon that is I think that is the best game I've seen him play in a red and blue jersey. And it wasn't about what he normally focuses on. It wasn't all about his attack. It was about his defence and his desperation in defence.
Can we take the Newcastle Knights question back to origin in two ways? One, Kalen Ponga says no to Billy Slater, and essentially his season's gone from strength to strength since then. Bradman Best gets selected for Game 3 for New South Wales, and his season's gone from strength to strength since then.
Spot on, Matty. Bradman Best, the egg's finally hatched. That's what I like when you see sometimes you go, this guy's got all this potential and he just can't quite live up to it. I mean, let's not forget, about a third of the way through the season, there was talk going around that the Knights were shopping him around. And, they wouldn't let him go now. It's playing great football. The Kalen Ponga situation, Matty, is that, with Kalen, for Kalen, it's just a matter of staying on the field. I mean, he's just got such immense talent. It's just staying on the field, staying healthy, staying fit. If he can do that, and the other players can do their job, then mate, Kalen will turn it on.
How far can the Knights go, do you reckon?
Well, Matty, I was thinking that I was driving home from work last night, and I thought to myself, well, we look long odds to play finals football. Then suddenly, well, here we are, pending a catastrophe where Knights are going to be there. Well, I mean, I'll ask you the question: if they were to play the Broncos or the Panthers this week, would I give them a chance? And I would.
You have to now.
I'd give them a real chance, because they're just playing with such confidence. And a lot of times, Matty, the really crucial thing about winning a competition is getting your timing right. Right? And as much as coaches and strength and conditioners saying we're designing this to get it right then, at the end of the day, it can just be pot luck. It can just be the fact that all your best players are suddenly fit and they're firing and they're fresh. And that is the case at the moment with the Knights.
How far can the Rabbitohs go? They've got the bye this weekend, and it might be the most crucial time for them to get the bye. Not only the 2 points, but the reset factor.
Well, buy your tickets now for Allianz Stadium in 2 weeks' time. That Friday night game, Roosters versus Souths. Roosters will, of course, move on to 30 points. So will the Roosters if they beat the Tigers this week, which will be tricky. And that will set up that game at Allianz, which will be, every time these two sides meet, honestly, I go away and I think to myself, has there been a bigger game than when these two met? It's because they've never played in a grand final. So, was it last year, Matty? You had that finals game. That was just chaotic. It was madness. Some people didn't like it. They thought it was over the top. I absolutely loved it. As a kid who fell in love with rugby league in the 70s, it was a throwback game. And I tell you what, it might be the same in a couple of Fridays' time.
Our best performer, Matty, from the weekend for BizCover, business insurance that'll have your small business winning every time. Go to bizcover.com.au. Who shone for you?
Matty, look, we've spoken a lot about Kalen Ponga, but I tell you what I'll give it to. I'll go left to Api Coruscant. like, can a bloke do any more for his football side than Appy did? And they, through necessity, they had to play him in the halves. He led him around the park. He tackled his backside off like he always does. And at the end of the day, he came up with the play, or two great plays at the end to get him home against the Dolphins. He was the best. He was the best performer in that side. The other best performer was the West Tigers club. Is there anything more fitting to give Luke Brooks when he's going to go away? They usually give a watch, but they brought a barbecue onto the field. A beef-eater barbecue presented to Luke Brooks. Honestly, it was like right on the field. I was watching an episode. I was watching that film Spinal Tap. It was Spinal Tap for rugby league. Brooksy would have been out there going, "They said, mate, we've got something for you." He'd be going, "Oh, here we go.
Beauty.
Might be a Rolex, might be
Rolex."
And all of a sudden, did you see when they presented? He grabbed the barbecue and he looked under the lid because he must have been thinking, "Surely this is a G-up. Surely there's something underneath the lid of the barbecue."
Oh, those kooky funsters! They've put the Rolex in the barbecue. Well, I'll just lift the lid and that's where it'll be.
Oh dear! You know what? People have said, Brooksy hasn't played, 1 foot out the door. But like yesterday, I think when a player's been in the club for a long time, you don't actually need a lot of times to present them, something big. I mean, they've been well paid over the stint. It's almost like get them on the field, shake your hands, and say, "Mate, listen, thank you so much for your time. You won't be forgotten at this club." I don't think. I don't think the barbecue was necessary, to be honest. And at least they could have thrown in some meat.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, a couple of snags.
Or a goat. Maybe if they took a goat on the field and slaughtered the goat, cooked it up, and had a goat curry at half time.
You know what barbecue says to me, Matty? Rugby league. That's what it says. Rugby league. Nobody else could do that, but the
no one else could do it. It's very, very good.
Exactly. 1300 01 1170 is the open line number this morning. Matty's with us for the first hour this morning, so we've got a bit to truck through. We'll take our first break. We'll come back. I want to talk about the top 8 deciders. So one player from each team who could be the deciding factor in the premiership. I reckon we've already touched on a couple there. And a possible rule change in the off-season. So Peter V'landys says, what's the difference between a bouncing ball and a high ball if you're in the air? It's a very good question after Manly v Warriors on the weekend. We'll do that. This is the Monday Roundup with Matty Johns right here on SEN. Yeah, welcome back. Rooster Muzz points out that last round, Rabbitohs v Roosters, is the Olympic Stadium, not at Allianz.
Oh.
Thank you for that.
Dear.
It's at the big show, that one. Matty,
what a shame! What
Jason.
a shame, Matty. What a I don't want to be disparaging of the Olympic Stadium, but that's a shame.
Yeah, no, Jimmy Smith and I had a chat about that, mate, in the office. I think it was last week, and I mean, you could build a very strong case for moving it to Allianz Stadium, couldn't you? I mean, they're obviously going to the Olympic Stadium for the obvious reasons, but I reckon it'd have more juice, back at home at Allianz. But anyway, thank you for that, Rooster Muzz.
Yeah.
Jason, can I have your opinion, Matty? Honestly, what do you think Mitchell gets for the elbow yesterday at the end where he got sin-binned?
Oh, do you know what? I think he'll get a fine. That's what I think it'll happen. It was just crazy. Like, if Jason and Mitchell, you're in the box and you go, mate, that's our season. Like, when we go through this list, Matty, about the players, I'm looking there, and there's a lot of obvious ones. So I've sort of gone left of centre. But when I go to South Sydney, I look and I go, okay, who can I think outside of Latrell? I said, no, it's Latrell first, second, and third. In that, like, when Latrell is on his game and in the mood, you just see how that affects everyone in the South Sydney side, and they start to find their gears. Where yesterday it took a little bit, like Latrell's first couple of touches were good, but then he sort of drifted out of the game, then back in, and his second half was poor, and that just bled through the football side. I think what was emblematic of South yesterday, and sort of their lack of attention to detail, was Latrell hitting the post in that kick almost in front, where he just went, you heard, isn't it funny in that moment? Like, in that moment when Cookie scored, I looked and I went, momentum's just swung here a little bit. I looked at Newcastle behind the post. The crowd was a little nervous. Latrell hits the post. The crowd goes berserk, and the momentum suddenly swings back the other way.
James says, so the Tigers give Brooksy a barbecue as a farewell gift. Don't they realise he's going to Manly, not St George? That's smart, James. That's pretty, that's pretty
That
clever for
good.
a Monday morning. Very good.
Well, I thought it might have been. I thought it might have been a little bit comedic. You know, remember James Maloney used to always talk about his barbecuing. Yeah, we'll just leave it at there.
Leave it right there. Brett from Kingsgrove points out that we're now allowed to call it a core stadium after the World Cup has finished. So FIFA's now handed back our terminology. Thank you for that. Everyone's up and chipper this morning. So the top 8 deciders, as you mentioned, I want to know one player from each team who could be the deciding factor. So let's rip through the current top 8 and give me your key deciding factor. Panthers.
Well, Matty, as I said before, it'd be so easy for me to just go Cleary, Ponga, and just go down the list. But what I'm going to do is I'm just going to get left to centre, someone who's absolutely crucial but may not get the raps of the Nathan Clearys. For Penrith, it's Isaiah, right? Now, if you watched the way they played the Titans, they were below their best, but Yo just varies their yardage game so much. He gives them so much direction. He's as important to their attack as Nathan Cleary. So Isaiah for Penrith.
Okay. Isaiah, what about the Broncos?
Well, I mean, it's obvious, their spine is so important, but the bloke who, along with Haas, has been incredible has been Pat Carrigan. And what you see with Carrigan, I said the other day to this, he's developing his game on the run. He's flying the plane and building at the same time. His ball playing has improved out of sight. The improvement game by game of Pat Carrigan is mirroring the improvement of the Broncos. So Carrigan, for mine, is the man for the Broncos.
The Warriors, it's going to be hard to go past Sean Johnson at the Warriors, but I reckon there's Tohu Harris is. I mean, you take him out of that team.
Tohu Harris is one of the most underrated players in the last decade. He is a great player. But guess what? I'm overlooking him. I'm going to go Aiden Fanua-Blake. Because without Blake doing what he's been doing every single week, we don't see the best of Sean Johnson.
Okay, so Aiden Fanua-Blake for the Warriors. The Storm, is there a player already there, or is there a player possibly coming back?
Yes, you're right. Well, my first impulse was to go Nelson Asafa-Solomona because the pack lacks explosiveness, but he's one bloke who's got it, that size and power. But Ryan Pappenhausen is that, back to that point again, they lack explosiveness through the middle. If I was Craig Bellamy, I'd be bringing Paps into the 17 this week, and I'd be using him in a 30-minute burst through the middle.
So Ryan Pappenhausen, the deciding factor for the Melbourne Storm. Okay, we go positions 5, 6, 7 and 8 at the moment. Sharks.
Okay, Braden Trindle. Because the moment Trindle has got himself into that side and got comfortable in his role, suddenly Nico Hines has just got back to his best football. He's just taken so much pressure off Nico Hines along with Connor Tracy as well. Like there was that game on Thursday night, there was a point that it was in the balance against the Cowboys. And suddenly Trindle comes up with a 40-20 kick, and the next set of 6 just earns a repeat set, and it just settled everything for the Sharks.
What about the Raiders?
Josh Papali'i. Right. Now, if you look in the middle of the year, when the Raiders were playing their best football, it was as good as I've seen Papali'i play. Just his size and that late footwork, and they need him to get back to his best.
Then we got the Knights and Rabbitohs. So we've had a good look at these two teams, but let's look at it a little bit differently. So the top 8 deciding factor, you reckon?
Well, look, it's of course, you look at Kalen Ponga, but let's have a look at what gets him the ball in his sweet spot, and it's the halves. On the weekend it was Clune, but Hastings and Gamble, and Hastings is the half on that side of the field, on Ponga's left preferred side, so Hastings.
Okay, so Jackson Hastings there, and what about the Bunnies, mate?
Lindsay Collins. It's obvious to go, yes, of course, Tedesco, yes, of course, Manu and Keary and so on. But Collins, like the Roosters getting back to winning ways has come at the same time that Collins has taken his origin form and put it at club level.
Did we do the Roosters, the Rabbitohs?
We didn't do the Rabbitohs, and I can't look left of centre. Like I said before, it's Latrell first, second, and third.
Yeah. All right. So let's take a look then. Top 8 deciding factors for Penrith: Isaiah Yeo. For the Broncos, Pat Carrigan. For the Warriors, Adam Fanua-Blake. For the Storm, Ryan Pappenhausen. For the Sharks, Braden Trindle. Raiders, Josh Papali'i. For the Knights, Jackson Hastings, or in brackets, the Halves. And for the Rabbitohs, it is Latrell first, second, and third. Interesting, isn't it? If you probably lined up those players there, the other part of that question is, without those players, do the superstars in those teams get to perform the way that they do? And we probably know the answer to that.
Yeah, that's right. That's why I've gone for those guys, is that they're the guys who behind the scenes, they get it going. Like it's like this, Matty. Like sometimes you'll see a spectacular try, but then you pull back the layers of the try, and it can be as simple as Lindsay Collins just ripping the ball forward, poking his nose through the line, playing the ball quick, and away they go. Well, that's the pebble in the pond. Everything that has expanded off that has come from just that play.
Yeah, let us know your thoughts. Do you agree with those? The top 8 deciders, we'll put them on our social page at Matty White SEN on our Twitter feed as well. So Matty Johns' top 8 deciding factors for those that are in the running for the premiership. 0457 736 736. Let us know yours if they differ, and we'll come back after the news.